This second panel is about innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology in this new normal. And for that, we're gonna have an extraordinary moderator, Jolynn Vallejo.
Thank you for the introduction. This is going to be a great session. We have a rock star panel. We'll be discussing innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology in the new normal from a venture capital perspective, from a public market perspective, and also discussing success stories like Bitso and Wizeline. I'm Jolynn Vallejo. I am the former director of LatinSF. Thank you, US-Mexico Foundation, for this incredible workshop. I think it's so exciting to have spaces to look at what we need to troubleshoot and find solutions to improve our overall regional collaboration. I also want to thank AWS and especially Enrique for your leadership. I think it's incredible that you're gathering such team players across the region to bring forward an agenda. So thank you so much. Well, I want to jump right in, and rather than going through our profiles, which you already have, we've got this great panel. So I think I want to start with, you know, the incredible success story of Bitso that we're also excited about. Congratulations on getting unicorn status just about 3 weeks ago. 2.2 billion valuation, that's huge. For those of you that don't know, Bitso is a cryptocurrency marketplace. You can buy 4 different digital currencies, I believe. You're in Mexico, Argentina, and starting in Brazil. Obviously, over the last 7 years, it's taken you a bit to get to that unicorn status. And I think what I want to talk about is sort of the innovation that's required to get there and a little bit of the troubleshooting. As we've been hearing in the recent panels and, you know, in conversations of investment and startups and innovation, it looks like Latin America is always lagging behind a little bit, and the US is losing a little bit of steam compared to innovation coming out of China and Israel. So I'm wondering, Felipe, if you could share with us sort of how Bitso has approached the current context in innovation and maybe some of the hurdles you had through that process.
Hi, Jolynn, and good morning to everyone. Well, afternoon in Mexico. Just wanted, that's a lot of questions in one question. We can be here drinking and sipping a cup of coffee and just talk for many hours about Bitso and this whole adventure. So Bitso started in 2015, well, actually 14, but operating 15. And the whole idea of this was just to give access to this new technology to Mexicans. And since then, the mission has been changing. And now, because you were mentioning like we're this marketplace for crypto, and we are, but we're also trying to make, and this is our motto, is make crypto useful. And when we talk about making crypto useful, we talk about sending money abroad, receiving money into Mexico in the form of remittances, just making digital payments between persons, like a P2P payment. No, so we've been trying to democratize these financial services. No, and you were mentioning this and talking about these hurdles, and I think Ken and Valeria in the panel before this one, they were talking about some of the hurdles that we faced. And a clear regulatory, a clear hurdle was the regulatory one. For sure, you have things like when you're starting a business in Mexico, you have things like a lack of clarity in the fiscal aspect, the fiscal rules, for example, for crypto. You have barriers like digital onboarding. They're like very, very old rules in respect to digital onboarding. So just being able to open an account in a cell phone and have a high transactionability available, it's a super big hurdle. You have other stuff like lack of the use of technologies for supervision, for financial supervision. You have the CNBV in Mexico, for example, or the CNB in Argentina. Trying to supervise. I think Valeria was talking about this, like technology is always going faster than the regulations and the law. And basically you have these regulators that have a limited amount of time, and they're trying to regulate or supervise these hundreds of financial institutions with very old or very, well, not with the best or the most efficient tools. And that's also one of the biggest hurdles we faced. We ended up in, and I'm going to close my comment with this, but we ended up setting shop in different parts of the world. One part in Mexico, we ended up with a license in Europe and license in Latin America, while our hope was to be a very Mexican company. But I think there's too many things to change, and I hope in the following years we can modify those regulations that are scaring away capital. I think Fer can talk more about it.
Right, and we definitely don't want to scare away capital. Fernando, it's been such an amazing time for the Mexican technology ecosystem. And I want to turn it over to you a little bit as one of the top funds in Mexico, supporting seed stage, supporting innovation really across the board. But I think, you know, when we're looking at what's happening right now in Latin America, but specifically in Mexico, it seems to be so hot and everyone's so excited, and it's this great boom that we're facing. But is it really as far as regulation, and how many things do you have to get through in order to get funds, you know, like Accel, like QED, and top Silicon Valley funds that are investing with you to actually make the investment happen?
Thank you, Jolene, and great to see you, and great to see all good friends and admired people. Thank you, Enrique, as well. And as you say, this is a fascinating time to be doing entrepreneurship and venture capital in Mexico. The space is hot, and I think the fundamentals are there, are solid, and a long-term vision on it. And I think it has to do with reaching a tipping point after several years of being working on this. And Bismarck can talk about how many years we've been preaching about this great pool of talent and amazing domestic market and all the advantages of doing business in Mexico that have, after many years, after many bricks that have been put together one after the other, we're reaching a point in which, as you mentioned, international funds are realizing there's a huge market, that it's right next door, that we have a lot of advantages, and we know the culture, and there's this whole experience of working together. Let's just tap into it. And I think there's fundamentals for that. There's a good reason, and not only a hype. There is, the more we have amazing stories like the one being built by Bitso, the more everybody will realize that there's a good investment case. And what I love is that despite economic cycles or despite political environments, this trend is acyclical. It is happening despite all these movements, and it will continue growing. What I see is the more sophisticated investors from international markets that are looking into Mexico do understand that there is a local expertise associated with it, that there is a regulatory framework in many industries. So if you're doing fintech, you do have to understand the regulatory environment in the financial sector in Mexico. If you're doing healthcare, you really need to understand the local dynamics of the healthcare sector. And then there's others that are more cross-border and have less of a challenge in terms of the precise local regulation. And the investors know how to differentiate on those. And they do understand, will I be needing a local partner in order to navigate this uncertainty? Do I need a local partner that will have the right network and will help me translate and identify the risks and work with the founders? And that sort of pairing with the ambition, the international experience that these funds have with the local expertise has been a good formula for us. It's been important to create the reputation and to be the go-to fund to partner with for these big names when they realize they need local expertise. And local expertise is not only about regulation; it's about identifying talent. It's about go-to-market strategies. It's about culture and understanding the end consumer and this subtle approaches to it. So understanding the language. And again, it is not only Mexico. When we look at Latin America as a whole, it might be perceived from afar, like, well, you go to Mexico, then you go easily to Colombia or to Chile or to Argentina or to Peru, and it is not. You have to understand the differences again in the local regulation, but also in culture. And we are at that point. We are seeing more and more, and this is on a daily basis, rounds of investors from Silicon Valley, from Europe, from New York, from Asia, that are finding that the fundamentals, the dynamics, and the talent that is creating interesting things in Latin America is there, and that the upside is huge if they do the right things. So very excited about the moment, as you said.
Right. However, it must be a little draining for you, as exciting as it might be, to be that sort of local contact. I think this is where regulation and public policy has to come in to facilitate those transactions. So if there was one thing that you could throw out there for our audience to really pay attention to in order to improve that, what would that be?
So I think Mexico did a good job in terms of public policy to create the supply side of it. So the number of venture capital funds that were created in the past administration related to seed funding was the right way to do it. I hope it will continue. And then you tap into a sort of missing middle that is harder to comply, in which Mexico ventures and initiatives like that have been tied to the private equity industry as a whole, and Maria can talk more about it, has been a key element. And now we're connected with the pension fund. So the supply side part of the venture capital in terms of policy, I think has been the right one, and I think it's almost complete. We are missing, we're taking some steps backwards in some key links, in my view, but I think let's just allow for the market to continue on that. The easiness of doing business, again, we talk very little about it. It is easy to create a company in Mexico. It is fast to establish a company. We have the treaties to do a holding in the US or in other jurisdiction and connect with Mexico easily. We have labor agreements. So we have to talk about the things that we've done right. Where I think the key element is going forward is complying with contracts and just giving Estado de Derecho, and that is important. I think that's what investors will be looking for. If I sign something, will that be enforced? Will I have to go to courts? Will courts work whenever I have a controversy? And Mexico has to stand out in terms of that. But I don't see any essential part of creating a startup and scaling a startup in terms of attracting resources, both financial and human resources, to scale a business, and in tapping into the market. I don't see any break to it, anything that is stopping things from flowing. Where I say is, will there be changes in law that I didn't anticipate that completely just give us uncertainty on how the industry is going to be building up? And we have to give certainty about that. And I think that's where public policy should be focused on.
I couldn't agree more, Fernando. And speaking of things done right in our ecosystem, I'd like to switch it over to Bismarck. Bismarck is, of course, a two-time founder, now incredibly successful, doing great things for our talent in Mexico. For those of you that don't know, Wizeline also has, aside from a product building company with software, Wizeline Academy, where you're really fostering the talent that's local in Mexico. And I personally appreciate, because I think that that's where the most impact can be made, as we heard a lot in our previous panel. So Bismarck, speaking from the perspective of you've already done it, you've scaled, you have more than 200 employees, you're living this whole trajectory of the hurdles, but now you're in a successful place. What do you think our ecosystem needs? And tell us more about Mexican talent for those of us in the audience that still aren't convinced that Mexican talent is up to par with the United States.
Thank you, Jolene. It's so great to see fantastic friends. And I will say that we first opened operations in Guadalajara, Mexico for my prior company, Viala, in 2010. And if I look at the history of the Silicon Valley where I'm based, and I look at what has happened over the last decade, I really do think that about 50 years of what happened in Silicon Valley has happened in 10 years in Mexico. And the reason that that's happened is because people like Fernando, people like Maria Ariza, and entrepreneurs like Felipe, and entrepreneurs like Alberto Flores, who's at the helm of Quesky, who have put a tremendous amount of work into building the ecosystem, but also changing the overall cultural mindset. One of the things that most companies need to get up and running is seed capital. And back in 2010, if you weren't building a building, there was no way that you were going to get any kind of seed capital. And I think that the education that has gone into the family offices and the very wealthy individuals in Mexico has helped accelerate and get us to a point where we are able to get a handful of unicorns in Mexico and across Latin America. So it's a very exciting time. I also really appreciate what Fernando said about being positive. I think it's very easy, and historically as Mexicans, we start to focus on the things that aren't working or the things that aren't going well, but we should really think about those as opportunities, especially when we're in the entrepreneurial space of fixing them with technology and building new businesses. From a talent perspective, we believe that talent is evenly distributed around the world. So if there are 100 people in any one location, the likelihood that there's a certain percentage that are going to be very intelligent, highly capable, is very similar in Israel as it is in Nigeria, as it is in Mexico, as it is in Argentina. And so the difference in some of these places is that experience and opportunity isn't equally distributed around the world. And so I think what's really exciting about technology companies and entrepreneurial-based companies is that they bring that opportunity to learn. And one of the things that we did with Wizeline back in 2018, 2017, we needed to hire 15 UX designers. And we were interviewing, and there were a lot of people who had the potential to be really good, but they didn't have the experience of building applications that would reach 10 million unique users or 1 million concurrent users. They didn't have that experience of scale. And so I asked our head of UX, I'm like, do you think we can train them? She's like, I don't know, let's figure this out. And so we opened this 6-week course, 6 nights a week, 4 hours a night. And we had about 300 people who applied. We had 25 people who were accepted, 24 people that completed the program. We ended up hiring 15 of those 24 people. It worked out so well that now we've expanded into a program that has already reached over 30,000 people. They're free programs, they're community programs. This year we'll probably reach about 50,000 people just this year because we've gone digital. Before they were all in person. And in the last panel, we talked about education and the partnership between the public and private sector. I think the private sector needs to do more, because we can complain that maybe there aren't enough people out there who are skilled and ready to work. It's like, well, then let's put the work in to make sure that we are able to bridge that gap between the talent and the opportunity by giving them the experience that they need to be successful.
That's right, Bismarck. And I think what's really unique about your program is even though you're only selecting a certain few, I think you said something like 25, the rest of the folks got trained, and they got trained for free, right? And that's amazing because you don't owe them anything. They don't owe you anything other than that opportunity or that chance to actually be trained and then work at a high growth company like yours. But if they didn't make it, they can go and apply to some other places and still put that on their resume. I went through and completed the Wizeline Academy program. I think that's great impact for all the ecosystems that in Mexico need talent, because even though you're in Guadalajara, you could still go and work for Felipe at Bitso or actually anywhere in LATAM, really. So at this point, I think, we're saving a little bit of the best for last in this first round of questions. I'm a big fan of Maria, I have to be honest, from her trajectory before at Amex Cap and now creating the second stock market that Mexico has, BIVA. As CEO, it's incredible what you've been able to do over the past 3 years. It felt like it was just yesterday. I was at Meet the Tech Talks, and it was announced that there was this new stock market, and no one really knew how successful it was going to be. But just in the last year, 2020, which has been obviously a difficult year for everyone, BIVA increased its volume by 70% to $115 million. That's huge. Right now, it's about 16% of the Mexican stock market, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think most importantly, the ability to multiply the flow of average daily orders from 4 million to 10 million is huge. So I think right now, what I want you to share with us is, what role has BIVA played in linking the private and public markets, and what are you doing to take these industries into the next stage?
Oh, thank you for that introduction, Jolynn. You were so nice. It's great to see.
I'm not nice, it's real.
Oh, you're great. It is such an honor to have sharing this panel with friends as Fernando, Felipe, Bismarck, Enrique. Thank you for the invitation. Such an honor. Well, basically, and I couldn't agree more with what Fernando said. I mean, this is the time to really start a business in Mexico. This is the right time for entrepreneurship. There's everything. There's capital, there's ideas, talent, necessity. We have such a huge country where we can actually try our innovations, and we have being really successful. We have unicorns right now, like Felipe's, no? So Mexico, it's such an interesting opportunity, and we have to capitalize on that. So what we be doing in BIVA for the last 2.5 years is basically trying to retain those companies into our markets and make them capital available for them and access liquidity for investors. So what we saw is basically that we needed a space for more innovative, more fast-growing companies, attract these other VC portfolio companies that were basically not staying at our markets, and see and listen and understand their pain points, so that Mexico could be the real hub and the real opportunity and solution for this liquidity and visibility opportunities that they needed. So what we have done, and basically, since I have my heart in the private equity side, as you know, before I was in BIVA, I am in Annex Cap. Basically, what we saw is that something was really broken between the private and the public world. Only 4% of the exits were through local public markets. So we thought, and we saw that procedures were complicated, costs were elevated, investment firms were not interested, very low, a few investors that actually participated within the mid-cap segment. That's the one we saw as an opportunity. And also what we saw is basically what Fernando was saying, is that these large VC funds that come and co-invest with Mexican VCs in later stages, feel the boards, and basically they would look for other opportunities in their home countries, no, as an exit opportunity, and that's great. And what we thought is, how can we make everything to work for companies, to have the best in Mexico and the best outside in other markets? So how can we deal with this to put the best solution for companies? And so we have created this set of plans and solutions, not only dual listings that have been very successful for some of the companies that we're seeing, also direct listings, also SPACs, also many vehicles that are actually looking exactly to solve this problem and make it an opportunity so that could really, companies could increase liquidity, could increase visibility, and of course could increase their investor base. That would take them to an increased valuation. So that's basically our main focus on BIVA, how to make it an efficient, viable solution for companies to tap into other markets as they should, but also to retain them in their country so that our investors, our customers, our Mexican can also participate in the growth opportunity. So, I mean, we have programs in the offer side, we have programs in the demand side. We'll talk about them later. But I mean, we're doing this all, you know, at the same time, and I think we're pushing the status quo into a better place for our companies in Mexico and startups.
There's two things I want to say to that before we continue the conversation. The first is, when you mentioned Amex Cap, it's interesting that you mentioned it very much from the private equity space. And recently, with the emergence of a lot of the new seed stage funds, I think Amex Cap has really gotten also not just a private equity identity, but a venture capital identity.
Totally.
And
Totally.
That's what the ecosystem needs. And then another thing I want to mention that I think is really incredible that BIVA is doing is, as more Mexicans become educated in how to buy stocks and invest themselves, it's really exciting that they can now approach the US market being in Mexico. And I think that wasn't available before. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I forgot maybe to mention that our strategy, our main core, it's our trading platform, and it's basically where international actors from all around the world, especially, you know, sophisticated high frequencies, those are that are actually very active in terms of liquidity in these markets, basically can connect and begin operations within our market right away without any investment. So that makes them be more attracted to Mexico, and that with our market data tool, basically what it does is that these foreign investors receive all the opportunities, all the information about Mexican equity market right away. So this combined basically makes our market more visible, more attractive, and more united with sophisticated economies such as the US.
And more democratic, I might add, which
Completely.
is also another reason why Bitso is so incredible, because I see a lot of alignment, even though you're in different spaces. Bitso is also allowing for this democratization of participation from the overall population in Mexico. So Maria, what do we need to get companies like Bitso and others that have scaled, are, you know, ready in the next few years to list, to be a Latin American IPO? And I'm not just talking about Mexico, because I think companies like Rappi could very easily list on BIVA. So what do we need, and what would you say to the regulators out there to push for, you know, a nice seamless process?
Yeah, I'm always pushing my friends. They know me, right? What I would tell, first of all, the entrepreneurs and the fund managers is that we need to work together. We need to become the magnets of investors out there, and we need to attract the capital back to our country. That's the way it is. And if we work together in this and in all the pain points or areas of opportunity yet in our markets, Mexico can really become this LATAM door that can actually push our VCs, portfolio companies really further, I believe. No, so we need to work together. We need to stick together, and we'll be in the big leagues if we do it. We still have a lot to do, and we're tapping on things like, for example, valuation. We're still, I think, lagging in terms of how investors do evaluate today, especially the valuation that VC requires. So I believe there's still a disconnect between the local markets and these new companies and their willingness to accept evaluations putting, right? So I think this is a little deterrent, but we are working in really strongly in terms of educating in new forms of valuation of intangibles, technology, and the way a different real asset would be valued. So for this, we need a lot of help. And if investors, VC funds, and entrepreneurs help us do this, this will be overcome for sure. And also, I want to remember our audience that we have worked with the federal government on a fiscal reduction in terms of tax treatment of capital gains when you list a company in the Mexican market. So instead of paying 35% capital gains, you pay now 10%. So this 250 basis points that is in the table might be a good offset in terms of this valuation and multiple problem. So we think to think about it very thoughtfully, because it is an opportunity for funds to offset what we see in terms of valuation still. And the other thing that we still need to work, and we are doing this also by with talking with the government and regulators and all, it's how do we convince, try to bring along pension funds into our primary and secondary markets for the mid-sized segments. And I think, it is for us really important that they participate, because we need to increase our investor base. We need to increase the liquidity in the secondary market that is needed for companies to increase their valuation as well. So we believe pension funds could really help this endeavor, make it more profound market, and also continuing our education programs so that we can still bring along new retail investors. We have come a long way. Just 2 years ago, there were less than 250 brokerage firms, accounts, and now we are almost at a million in a year and a half. And this has been a real job that we have done through education, through technology, and with the help of brokerage houses. So we believe all these initiatives together might have the result that we want.
Bravo! I can't congratulate you enough. It's game-changing. I want to quickly hear from Bismarck and Fernando on the valuation aspect, just the fairness of it. But before that, just reminding the audience to please put your questions into the Q&A box. I know that this is sparking maybe themes that you haven't heard of before. If you don't really understand Bitso and the impact it's having on the ecosystem, especially on cross-border payments, don't be shy. Just put your question in the Q&A box and we'll address it. I'm particularly interested in valuation because I think it hurts our ecosystem when companies are undervalued. And there's so many examples where I see just because companies are registered and listed here in the US, they have a much higher valuation. Fernando, are you seeing this with your startups, not just in your portfolio, but with other funds like Dila and et cetera that have collaborated with funds here? Do you think you're undervalued?
So I think it's changing. I think there is a dramatic difference between the valuations that we had on the portfolio back in 2012 or in 2015 to the ones we're having now, and it has to do with the potential. What I like is it comes from a changing mentality from the entrepreneurs themselves. So founders are realizing that they can build huge companies, and these changes come from example when new founders are seeing what Rappi and Bitso and Kavak and Corner Shop are doing. They say, I want to emulate them. I want to follow that path. When they know the story of Bismarck or the story of David Vélez and Nubank, you aspire to more, and that's what you forecast, and that's how you build your company to become a huge company. When that doesn't happen, when we were lacking that part, you would say, I want to build a company, and as soon as I can, I'll sell it to whoever is willing to do M&A in Latin America. And if the acquisitions that incumbents are doing in Latin America are in the neighborhood of $20 to $50 million, well, I have to adjust valuations backwards to give returns to investors according to those liquidity events. And that's why what Maria is building is so crucial for everybody in the industry. If we have, as we're seeing, founders with a sufficient ambition, not only to become leaders in Mexico or to build the biggest companies in Latin America, but really to make innovation coming from Mexico and Latin America have a saying in the world and create the new companies in the world as we understand emerging markets, then if we are aiming for that and we follow the examples of those unicorns and particularly those liquidity events and exits at those levels, then valuations are adjusted through the whole series of financing points. And we are seeing that. And international investors understand that. So we're showing that we can build unicorns in Latin America. We're showing that unicorns can be amazing, as Bitso is in Mexico. Now let's show that we can have liquidity events and IPOs and direct listing and de-SPACs at those levels with the founders that are creating value in a region for sure.
That's right. Just quickly, yes or no, quick comments. Bismarck, are you happy with your valuation? Felipe, are you happy with your valuation?
Yes, but I do want to follow up on this. And Fernando does have way more data than I do, but just on my angel investments and what I've seen and what I've done, I feel like valuations are probably 10x where they were 7-8 years ago. And across from seed all the way, obviously, to now the unicorns. Yes. And I think that's really good. And the reason, I want to speak from an entrepreneurial standpoint, the reason I think this is really good is there is a certain amount of fixed capital that's required to get business up and running. And if you get a $250,000 valuation and you raise $100,000, by the time you get to your Series B, Series C, as a founder, as employees, the amount of capital that the percentage ownership that you're going to have is going to be much, much smaller. And I think the likelihood of you're wanting to go public, you're wanting to go and stay on for the next couple of years is just much smaller. And so I think the reason bigger valuations are important is because you keep the people who are giving it their all, the sweat equity, the reason to stay on and to try to build something really big.
I love that comment. So important, because founders put their life and soul into their companies, and to see them so diluted, there's no incentive. You rather just exit by selling or merging and not really listing publicly. So great point, Bismarck. Felipe, since you're the most recent case, tell us quickly.
Let me, obviously it's a yes, and we're super honored about all this. Fer was talking about other companies being inspired by these companies, but we were inspired by other companies like Nubank, and it's true. Like you look up to other entrepreneurs and other companies, no? But the answer is yes. Now, one thing is, so there's this old euphoria when you get to this unicorn valuation. Everyone's going nuts and people are super excited, whatever. So I just wanted to like a brief story. I posted this thing on LinkedIn, like congratulations Bitso, whatever, about the round. And one of the comments was like, I'm a customer and I am not receiving this unicorn service, just like the quality of service. Like it was basically a customer support ticket in my thread. And I was like, okay, like we're not even close enough like to being where we want to be, no? So it was one of those things. In Bitso we have just, it's great news for the ecosystem, but I think we're trying to get back to work. That's it. These valuations sometimes are a distractor for the company and for the people building product and building things, and it's obviously, again, it's super exciting, but I think we've turned the page and we're trying to keep building stuff, no? And be true to our mission. So yeah.
Well, since we were talking about Amex Cap and how Amex Cap has played a role in the seed funding and the evolution of the ecosystem, I see that Liliana is here in the audience, and I'd love for her to turn on her camera if she's available. There you are. Hello.
Hello.
Following the female trajectory of just growth and amazingness that both of you have as leaders. Liliana, hearing what we've discussed here, what are your thoughts on the ecosystem and how it's evolved recently?
Yes, well, first, thank you to the U.S. Mexico Foundation and Enrique Perret for the invitation. It has been really interesting listening to the panelists, all of them key actors of the private equity and venture capital ecosystem in the region, and of course, most of them great friends. So happy to be here. I also think that we are living very exciting times, and we need to focus on the positive things. But of course, it's also a time to define and implement new strategies to consolidate the ecosystem and to help more VC funds and entrepreneurs to be successful. We already have the stories. We are very happy right now, but it's a time to do something else and to go to the next step. In particular, I see great opportunities that the USMCA have opened to the economies of the US, Mexico, and Canada, of course, also. For instance, there are chapters on digital commerce and small businesses, enterprises were added. And I think we can take advantage of this new legal framework to strengthen the innovation ecosystem in both sides of the border. As a first step, I think we can organize a dialogue. This is a great example that the useful of this kind of dialogue and meetings, but we need to make it in a more formal way, I think. I don't know if many of you remember that there was a Mexican US Entrepreneurship and Innovation Council many years ago. And it was very useful because this was a place in which many key players can have the opportunity to have a dialogue and to define a specific a roadmap with clear objectives and KPIs that will help a lot. In such mechanism, I'm not saying that we need to revive this mechanism, but we need something in which we can define different initiatives. One of them with a specific recommendation to the governments, and the other with initiative that we can implement among the participants of the private sector. For example, business trip, roadshops, data exchange, digital platform, tech transfer, demo days, etc. I do believe that the government play a key role when it comes to fostering innovation. And of course, part of the success that we are seeing right now is because of those public policies. But as a private sector, we cannot wait and see. But on the contrary, there are many things that we can do. So mainly this is the message. I think this is a great opportunity to organize among ourselves, to define initiative. I think the government from both sides will appreciate to have this feedback from the private sector in order to continue to consolidate the ecosystem. We have a very good advantage in the sense that we have great success stories, as we just listen, but we need to use them in order to define another strategies. So this is mainly what I think. Congratulate to all the panelists. It's a pleasure to see you.
I think the pleasure is ours, Liliana. Thank you again for your leadership as the current CEO of Amex Cap, and thanks for joining last minute. We've got a lot of questions here in our audience, so I want to turn it over to our audience. I think the first question, just to quickly wrap up the conversation on valuations, Carlos Cristiani is asking, you know, depending on where the startup is incorporated, Delaware or Mexico, is this something that investors are looking at when they're talking about valuations? And I'm pretty sure we sort of answered that, but Fernando, if you could just quickly share.
Sure. It is becoming more and more common to structure offshore structures and holdings, either LLCs or in other jurisdictions. Do expect to create a non-Mexican entity as the holding if you want to capture the pool of money that is coming. Yes.
Great. And
less to do with valuations and more to do with getting rid of red tape.
good. Yeah, good point. And then Carlos also had another interesting question for Felipe. I'm going to read it pretty much verbatim. Given the current cryptocurrency landscape and environmental concerns, obviously everyone's probably following what Elon's been doing and his impact on just overall crypto. But of course, Bitso is looking to empower certain parts of the market like Helium Network and HNT, which are A, very lean on the environment, and B, their market has an underlying asset with actual intrinsic value. So obviously Bitcoin, huge, mess right now. Everyone's talking about the incredible environmental impact to keep that going. So Felipe, what are your thoughts?
Thanks. Very interesting question. I think I've been in this industry for about informally for about 7 years, formally for about 5. And there's always a concern to solve, and I think that's fair enough. Before it was a security of the blockchain, before it was claims of it being a Ponzi scheme or whatever, and then the other part is Bitso is agnostic to which asset or which token we list. So we're not the Bitcoin fans or Ethereum fans or Bitcoin maxis or whatever, no, how they call it, maximalists, no. So that's that just to start those 2 points, and then talking about the environmental concerns, I think we need to be more vocal on 2 things. One, it does have an impact on the environment, and in Bitso we're talking about ways to mitigate that. We're talking about investing in these bonds to mitigate our carbon footprint. We're talking about these other, obviously there are other technological solutions that you mentioned, different blockchains. So the industry is indeed trying to solve this environmental concern. And then the second part is, I think this concern is kind of being blown out of proportion a little bit. For example, the traditional financial sector, I think that I please fact check that, but I think it's about the amount of pollution is about 3x the amount of Bitcoins and the whole cryptocurrency industry pollution. 70% of the energy used by Bitcoin is renewable energy, so it's 70% of it is renewables. So again, there is a concern, but I think it's being blown out of proportion a little bit. So yeah. And just to close my comment, also these issues like environmental issues, social political issues, the Generation X and the Generation C basically cares a lot about that. And our customers are super young customers, and we need to be mindful about that. Not just about our customers, about the people working, the 300 plus people working in Bitso. People care about these issues a lot, and so it's in our DNA, and we won't support. We will support technology, but we will support just the technologies that are environmentally thoughtful, no?
Felipe, I liked your comparison between other industries and the financial sector as a whole. All industries have an environmental impact, and I do agree with you that this is being blown completely out of proportion. As we like to say in the States, people are just throwing some shade. I want to move over to, oh, please.
Yeah, no, but again, just it doesn't make it less important, no, for us.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, but definitely not a reason to take away this incredible trajectory that cryptocurrencies in general or digital currencies are having in decentralizing otherwise centralized systems. So I want to look at, there are 2 questions from John, and I don't know how we can address them, but let's start with the first one. On the capital side, what needs to be done to support more first-time fund managers in Mexico and to increase alternative finance mechanisms? He has in parentheses, as we all know, the vast majority of SMEs or PYMEs are not high growth tech companies and will never be unicorns. I don't know who wants to tackle this first.
I can comment on it. I think it's a great question. I think the ecosystem in Mexico does need more first-time fund managers and does need a constant entrance into the market of new players, and then just let the market decide and create the funnels and have some of them mature. And again, I think it was a good policy that existed a few years ago that created about 35 different groups of fund managers, and out of those, unexpected numbers were able to move up the ladder and get additional funding and evolve as a firm. The natural role, the natural creator of first-time fund managers are the development agencies in each country, or the development banks. So we have a role for NAFIN and the IDB and CAF and all these institutions and multilateral agencies that have been typically creators of first-time fund managers. The other part of the equation is the role that family offices and high net worth individuals play on this. And the more we institutionalize the asset class, the more it will be natural for this pools of money to be channeled to the startup ecosystem through professional players. As Bismarck was referring, 10 years ago, this wasn't very professionalized, and we had some money, but people felt like, oh, I'm able to identify a trend or a nice company, or I have a nephew that is doing some interesting things. Let's just put money into him. And now we understand that this is an asset class in itself, and there are professional players that run the asset class, and those wealthy individuals and family offices should also be professionalizing their allocation to venture capital, and I think that will make a change. As for the second part of the question, I think he nails it. There is a difference between an SME, a PYME, and a startup, and it is the potential for high growth and becoming a large corporation that attracts venture capital. We are not in the business of financing SMEs, but there is a completely separate and important component in the financial sector of financing SMEs, and the banking system and the traditional financial players, and again, development agencies should be playing a role in providing finance. That is something that deters growth in a country for sure.
Right.
Can I jump just a little with an idea that will complement on Fernando's? Of course, the second part, I would like the market also to be an important and relevant participant financing SMEs, and we've tried to do this through basically the options that we are creating. But what I wanted to say really is we need to go back to our investors, to our institutional investors, and convince them in trying to put them again on track so that we do get funding for local managers. I mean, basically, this is important because local VC with local knowledge and local know-how and local know-who basically is something that companies and international investors that want to co-invest with us value tremendously. And that really drives more capital into our market in Mexico. So we need our investors, our Mexican investors, to bet on our VCs so that we can actually be able to attract also international and more sophisticated investors from abroad.
Or anyone else want to jump in on that one? Because there is a second also component of John's question for the entrepreneur side, which might be best for Bismarck, but maybe also for Felipe. On the entrepreneur side, what do you wish existed to expand opportunities for entrepreneurs moving to Mexico, you know, including immigrants, but also asylum seekers, former deportees who, contrary to the prevailing understanding, either want to build new lives in Mexico or have no other option? And I want to add to this question. Thank you, John. You're also hitting a pain point because we do have this flux of immigration and displacement between our two countries, which, you know, we don't always like to talk about, but innovation is also something that can solve some of this. So I don't know who would want to tackle this a little bit. Felipe, I see you unmuted.
No. I've been thinking about this the whole panel. Like we're missing. So we talk about this U.S.-Mexico relationship and this like physical area of these two countries. But I think the pandemic, and I'm gonna go full throttle on the geeky stuff right now. But also the pandemic accelerated this trend, and basically this trend is you can work remotely from wherever you want, no, from anywhere in the world, no. In Bitso, we're now a fully remote company. That means on the positive side, people who want to work in Bitso can do it from India. We have people from over 20 nationalities. We have people from India, Russia. We have people from the US, Great Britain, Colombia, you name it. No, so there's people from all around the world. So we're basically getting talent from all over the world, no, and you can work asynchronously, and it's super cool what the current situation untapped in terms of human capital. And but then you have all these other problems, and you were talking about people going to Mexico, for example, to live. And I think for that to happen, Mexico needs. We have an advantage. We have a great food. We have a beautiful settings. Beautiful people and like super nice people, and we have good VCs like Maria and Fer were talking about this. You also need to have. One of the challenges are banking services, for example. If you're a U.S. person or coming to Mexico and trying to open a bank account, it's like these small problems need to be solved. You have internet connection problems in some parts of Mexico still. Like there's this huge opportunity, and when I say I'm going to go full throttle on the geeky stuff, is my view is like we're going to end up in this world where you can live whenever you want, wherever you want, and just in this pseudonymous internet como economy, where you don't even have to know the name of the other person for him or her or to work in your company, no. And I think we need to be prepared as a country and as a region, no. So like you need to be mindful of what's happening. I talk to politicians and public policy makers. And they live in this very physical world sometimes, and this parallel world. And then you have this tech world when you have all these people trading Bitcoins and working from abroad and communicating remotely all the time. And it's basically these two worlds are just diverging at the moment. And at some point, reality is going to hit us, and we're going to be ready or not, I think. And we need to, no?
Felipe, I will kind of pile on to that, but disagree a little bit. If they can live anywhere, they should be living in Mexico. The cost of living, the connectivity, Mexico City is a first world city. You can find anything and everything that you could ever want, like New York City, the energy, the people. In Jalisco, Wizeline employs about 10% of the Muslim community. Now, it's not a huge community in the state, but we employ about 10%. And how did that happen? There was an Egyptian who applied via a platform called Code Fights. He was given a handful of jobs that he could apply for, somewhere in Europe, somewhere in Egypt. And then there was this Wizeline company in Guadalajara, Mexico. So he looked at Google Maps, he went through the streets like, oh, this place looks pretty good. He told his parents, I'm going to move to Mexico. And his mom's like, have you heard about the beheadings? And then his uncle said, no, who lives in Vegas, said, I go to Baja all the time. It's a great place. So he moved. And within 4 weeks, he had already recommended like 10 people. That first year that he started at Wizeline, he made more from referral bonuses than he did from his Wizeline salary. And so Mexico has this great immigration policy. If you're well educated, you should move to Mexico. It's good for the local ecosystem. It's good for everybody. A lot of the tech companies in the US use Canada as a holding spot because they're trying to get people into the US. they should be working with Mexico. Facebook should have a big development office in Mexico. Google should have a big development office in Mexico. And that immigration is just going to continue to accelerate innovation, the number of companies, overall investment in the region. So let's live in the physical world and let that physical world be Mexico.
Amazing. I agree now, Bismarck.
I'm sold.
I really agree on that, Bismarck. Like, let's prepare for that and keep building, no?
And in case anyone can see, behind me is actually a piece of artwork from Mexico. I am not of Mexican descent, I should say, and I'm a huge fan. That is an artist, Leon Larrea, a vocalist of a band called Zoe, one of my favorites, and also incredible music scene. So I had to do that as a former record label founder, needed to stick that in there. We have to wrap this up because it's 11 o'clock, but I want to leave this with everyone giving one recommendation to our audience on what you would change in the ecosystem. So Fernando, if we could start with you, the one thing, if you could just change one, what would it be?
I think we have to add patience. The elements are there, the pieces are there, the traction is there. Let's give us patience, and then you'll see all the results.
Great, I love it. Bismarck, back to you. What's that one piece?
More flexible labor laws. Just in the tech ecosystem, people get paid really well, and there's a lot of liquidity in the market, and so there should be more flexible labor laws.
Right, getting rid of some toxic talent can be equally as difficult as hiring great talent, right? I agree with that. Felipe.
Let me double down on the talent thing. Let's make Mexico the place where talent goes. That's it.
And saving best for last.
No. Thank you. I think we need more confidence. We need to work together. I mean, we are in the best country, and we have so many opportunities before us. So the future should be, a larger, deeper, more transparent, more inclusive market for all our VC portfolio companies, and of course, our markets. So thank you.
And regionally too, as Bismarck said,
sure, totally.
We should really be one solid ground for tech. California, Mexico, the entire US really. We do it in other industries, we should definitely be doing it in tech. Enrique Perret, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you, AWS Institute and US Foundation. I think this is it.
Thank you, Jolynn. Thank you, Bismarck, Fernando, Maria, and Felipe. Great way to end up a panel. I think migration is the future of Mexico, immigration in Mexico. We all need to work together to bring the best talent, but also to give the skills to refugees, to immigrants from Central America. So great way to end up this panel.